So today I'm going to be doing my 2021 reading year of review. I'm going to be talking about my reading statistics, and then I'm also going to be talking about the books that I read in 2021. I personally love watching this type of videos. I love watching statistics. Even if I don't know the person, I just love watching everyone's statistics and the way they read. And also for myself, I feel like my reading taste is always evolving and always changing. So maybe in 2 years it will be very different. I myself know the evolution that I've had over this past year regarding my reading taste, and also as me as a person, I've really changed this past year. I guess I'm making this video to immortalize my statistics, my reading year. This is actually my first time tracking my statistics. I've never done that before. During the last 3 weeks of December, I decided to go through my entire reading year and just start doing the statistics of everything. And thanks to the fact that I did that, I saw how little diversity my reading has. Like, I tend to read books from the same continents and from the same audiences or genres or categories. So that really helped me to make some goals for 2022 that so far I'm accomplishing, and I'm loving doing those challenges. But yes, I'm making an entire different video for my 2022 goals, like reading goals and life goals. I'm going to link it in the description box in case you want to see that video. But this video is just going to be for 2021. So this is my 2021 reading year overview. So now I'm going to talk about my 2021 statistics for my reading year. I read a total of 98 books, and I think that's kind of fun because I was born in 1998. Then I read 38,987 pages. Then the average book length is 397 pages, but I do think it's accurate. I tend to read books that are around the 400-500 page mark, I feel like. Then the shortest book that I read was The Hill We Climb. It was only 27 pages. I read it in one sitting. And then the longest book was actually Covet by Tracy Wolff. It was 862 pages. I read it on my Kindle, so I didn't know how long it actually was until I was doing this video, because on the Kindle you can see how thick a book is. Then for my ratings, my average rating was 3.4 stars. This is not very accurate because I like giving quarter-star ratings like 0.25, 0.5 and 0.75, but on Goodreads you cannot do that, sadly, so this is not like the most accurate thing. Then the most popular book that I read was Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone by J.K. Rowling. More than 10 million people have shelved this book, which I think is pretty accurate. I feel like the Harry Potter books are classics in some way or another. And then the least popular book was Los Grandes Misterios de la Historia Volumen 2. Only 12 people shelved this book, but it's one of my favorite books of the year, so it's very sad that not a lot of people read it. Moving on to the ratings, like I said, I like giving more specific ratings, so this is not super accurate. If you've been watching my videos for a while, you will know that I don't usually say my ratings on my videos because I tend to change my mind about ratings pretty often. The thing is that sometimes you may finish a book and you may think that it's just an okay book, but then you still think about it for years and years and years. First example that comes into my mind is The Old Man and the Sea by Ernest Hemingway. I think I rated that book like 3 stars, but now thinking about it like years later, I think it's a 5-star for me, honestly. And then there's some books that I gave 5 stars that now thinking about them is only a 3-star, but I don't really go out of my way to actually go and change those ratings. But yes, for the most part, I do think that this year I read a lot of 3 stars, and also there's more 2-star books than I would like, and then there's some 2-star books that were not actually like bad books. There were books like, for example, Twilight and Breaking Dawn that I don't especially think they're like amazing books, but they were fun reads. Like I was very entertained while reading those books, and yet I didn't really have a lot of 5-star reads. And then books read per month, I honestly don't really have an explanation why sometimes I read more than others. Maybe some months I read longer books, maybe I don't know. I don't actually have a specific motive for this chart. I do have to say that in December I read a lot of books because I was trying to read all the Goodreads Choice Awards books. I actually have read all of them, but I read them between December and January. I'm going to link that video in case you want to see that video. Then from genres, I'm actually kind of surprised. While I knew fantasy and classics were going to be on the top 3, but I had no idea that romance was going to be there. And also everyone classifies books differently. I myself know that when I do my stats for 2022, I'm going to do them very differently, like the genres. I'm not going to use non-fiction as a genre. I'm going to divide the non-fiction books into the different categories, like different genres, and then I'm also going to do some subgenres, like for example mythology. So I'm not going to use fiction or non-fiction or very broad genres. I'm going to try to do them as specific as possible. Some genres that I want to start reading more of is historical fiction and horror. I used to read so much historical fiction. It was one of my favorite genres, and horror is a genre that I really got into this year, and I'm really liking it so far. And then with poetry and graphic novels, the only reason why I have those is because I read them for the Goodreads Choice Award. I feel like I'm going to keep mentioning that video. But yes, I already read those genres for that video. Okay, and then when the book was published, as you can see, I read a lot of books between 2010 and 2016. That's because I went through a nostalgic phase. As you will see in the second part of this video, I reread a lot of YA dystopian paranormal books of that decade. Then I read a lot of classics from the 20th century and also books from the 16th and the 17th century are Shakespearean plays that I read. Surprisingly, I haven't read any book published in the 18th century. I actually searched books published in that century and there's not a lot of books that I'm interested in. And then also I think I had only read like 3 or maybe 2 books published in 2021. Until in December, I started reading a lot of books for the Goodreads Choice Awards. I keep mentioning that, I'm sorry. But that's why this is pretty high because of that reason. I do want to try to read books that have been published recently more often because I want to be up to date with new releases. Then for age demographic, most of the books I read were adult books or new adult. I am noticing more and more that I don't tend to gravitate towards YA books. I do still read them, but I usually rate them like 3 stars. I'm not enjoying them as much, and I am enjoying much more adult books. So this is something that I want to keep in mind the next time I pick up books. And then the children's books were actually children's classics. I read Peter Pan, Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, and The Secret Garden as well. Okay, and then for the author's continent, this is when I realized the lack of diversity I have on my reading. And when I mean diversity, I mean the lack of books I read from around the world. I feel like I always read books from American authors or from European authors, and you know, there's nothing wrong with that, obviously, but I realized that I want to read books from all over the world because I'm missing out on so many things. I think I do a good job reading books from different centuries and from different years, as you saw on the previous graph, but I do not do very well with reading books from different continents. As you can see here, I didn't read any books from Africa, and I only read 1 book from South America, 1 book from Oceania, and 2 books from Asia. I do want to change that because I think I'm going to have so much fun if I actually make the effort to read books from all over the world. I actually created a reading challenge for 2022 that is making me read books from all over the world. I'm going to link the video where I talk about the challenge down below in case you're interested in watching or maybe joining my challenge. And then I'm very ashamed of this graphic. As you can see, most of the authors I read from are white authors, and I didn't read any indigenous authors this year. Honestly, I had no idea the lack of diversity my reading had until I started doing these graphics, like until I started searching for the statistics. This is really sad in a lot of different ways. The first one is that I could be having so much fun reading authors from different backgrounds, but like I said, I'm changing that in 2022. But yes, I do know that I want to change this year. Then the majority of authors I read are female. But it's true that I like reading books written by female because I feel like, I don't know, I just like doing that. And I'm not saying that there's anything bad with male writers, I'm not saying that. Then the majority of books I read were in English. I should start reading more books in Spanish or Catalan. I feel like my grammar will improve much more if I start reading books in Spanish and Catalan. I do need to try to do that. It's not something that I'm going to prioritize, but it's something that I'm going to keep in mind. And also this year I'm going to start tracking the books I read that are translated. I didn't do that this year, but in 2022 I'm going to start doing that. Okay, and lastly, the books that I hold. So this year I acquired a total of 27 books. I bought 22 of them and 5 of them were gifted. And then from those 27 books, I have read 14 of them. I'm currently reading 4 of them, and then 9 of them are still unread. I think this is a good number. I don't tend to overbuy books, mostly because I do not have the economic power to do that. I do not have a lot of money to spend on books. So this was a little recap of my 2021 reading year statistics. Like I said, I did all these statistics in like the last 3 weeks of December, so maybe some of these things are not very accurate. In 2022, I'm actually doing some things differently. I am going to share how I'm tracking my reading this year, so if you want to see that, I'm going to link the video down below in case you're interested. And I'm obviously going to do this video again at the end of 2022. There's still 1 year left, but you know, in case you want to see it. Okay, now let's move on to all the books I read during 2021. This is a mix of some books I really liked, some books I did not like so much, some books I loved. Severance by Lingma is one of my favorite books of 2021. A Discovery of Witches, honestly, when I first read it, I was a little bit sad because I had so high expectations for this book. But now that I'm thinking about it, I think I want to continue reading the series, but I'm still not sure, so I don't know what I will do. Then I also read all these classics. Honestly, this year I read a lot of classics, as you saw, and I had so much fun. I love reading classics, and I always say this, but classic books are classics for some reason. If a book has been spoken about for so many centuries, even if it's a bad book, it's been spoken about for some reason, you know? So I always love reading them because they always have something to say. And then I also read 3 Jane Austen books. I actually want to read all her books in chronological order because I think I will appreciate those books much more. I read this randomly throughout the year. This may sound like a cliche, but I do love Jane Austen. I read a lot of Shakespearean plays. I read 7 of them. Then I also read these non-fiction books. Honestly, the only book that I would recommend is the last one, Impressionistas. Impressionist art is one of my favorite art movements, so I loved reading about those artists. Then these 3 books, the 3 of them were amazing. I've always loved thrillers and mystery, and I think these 3 are marvelous reads. Agatha Christie is always a must when it comes to mysteries and thrillers. Joel Dicker is a favorite of mine. I love his books. Then with Carlo Rizafón, I read 3 more of his books. El Príncipe de la Niebla, The Prince of the Mist, is one of my new all-time favorite books. So fucking good. So fucking good. Then I read these children's middle grade books. Coraline is a horror book that honestly I don't know why they say this is a middle grade, because I'm an adult and I got freaked out by this book. And then Peter Pan and Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. Peter Pan, I didn't like it so much, but I loved Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. I don't know if I tend to love nonsensical things in books, but with Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, I really did. And then this year I read for the first time a Silvia Moreno Garcia book. I read Mexican Gothic and Gods of Jade and Shadow. Mexican Gothic was fucking amazing. If you saw my December diaries, you will know this is one of my favorite books of 2021. Talking about favorite books, these 3 books are now an all-time favorite books. I love history, I love non-fiction, and being able to read about history written by historians, especially Spanish historians, I love that. And then other books that I didn't love, but I honestly had an amazing time reading them because they were so entertaining, but like in a weird way, because when I was reading them I kept thinking, what the fuck am I reading? But I was so invested in the story and I just wanted to continue reading those books. And those books are Crave, Crash and Covet from the Crash series. I know the 4th book comes out in 2022. Then I also read the first 2 books in the Acotar series, and honestly I think they're great books. I know a lot of people tend to hate these books, but I had a great time. I also read a lot of other fantasy books. I love fantasy. Fantasy, as you saw, was my most read genre of 2021. From these books, my favorite one was Anemo in the Ashes. I sadly did not like the 2nd book, but I do want to continue with the series. Oh, okay, and then I also continued reading the Mortal Instruments series. I read the 2nd, the 3rd, the 4th, the 5th and the 6th. I read the first one back in 2020 and I continued reading the series in 2021. Honestly, they were a fun read. I'm currently reading the Infernal Devices and I'm liking the Infernal Devices much more than the Mortal Instruments, but I'm only in the first book so I cannot really compare all of them. But I am liking the Shadowhunter's World and the Shadowhunter books. Then I also reread all the Harry Potter books. During winter of 2021, I went through a nostalgic phase where I read a lot of YA dystopian dystopian books and also paranormal books from the 2010s. I read the last 3 books from the Twilight series. I read Twilight and Midnight Sun during 2020, so I just wanted to finish reading the series. They're obviously not amazing novels, but at the same time they're very entertaining, so I had a great time reading them. Then I also read the entire Divergent series. I read the 3 books from the trilogy, and I also read the novella. Then in 2021 I also wanted to start reading more romance books, but I honestly had no idea where to begin. I continued reading the Briar series. This is a new adult romance based in university. I read the 2nd, the 3rd and the 4th book. Then for romance I also read some random romance books that they were fine, I don't know. And then the last thing that I'm going to talk about are these books. These are part of the Goodreads Choice winners of 2021. I'm currently reading all of them, and these are the ones that I was able to read during the end of 2021. From these ones I found 2 new favorites, Empire of Pain and Crying in H Mart. So yes, these were all the books that I read in 2021. Hopefully I didn't leave any of them. I've also done wrap-ups for every single season during this year, so if you want to check them out, I'm going to link a playlist in case you want to watch those videos. So I hope you guys liked this video, the statistics, the graphics and all of that. I personally love watching all the visuals. I just think that it's very pleasing visually, and it's something that I enjoy watching, like I said already. But yes, I hope you guys liked this video, and I will see you very soon. Bye!